the state sets its sights on local spending.
You have the authority. This is no longer optional.
South Florida among the first to be doged.
Broward County, unfortunately, is probably, in my mind, one of the worst offenders.
War on waste or political harassment?
I'm sure it is just a coincidence that he's only gone after two bright blue counties.
Favor?
Aye.
Not so fast.
The idea that people can have an election yanked from them.
The elections Miami moved are put back by a judge. The candidate that took it to court right here live.
We could not have anticipated a $45 million haircut in July.
Millions held up from South Florida schools now on the way. Miami-Dade Superintendent on what's to come. The big news of the week and the newsmakers all live this week in South Florida.
Good Sunday morning. Great to be with you this hour. Broward is bracing for the Doge, and Miami-Dade maybe too. Sweeping audits of some local governments starting Thursday is one of the first moves by the state's new chief financial officer, hours after his swearing in this week and a day after he previewed the doging of local governments right here on This Week in South Florida last week.
Any government in the state that gets any state funds, whether it be an appropriation, whether it be just something in the regular budget that flows down, we are going to start asking for stuff. We're going to start auditing them and make sure that they're not spending frivolously.
Broward County, the city of Gainesville, and Manatee County are the first three in the state Doge Crosshairs, with more on the list to come, targeted for what the governor alleges is excessive, wasteful, and or misspending. The state sent the first notices out Monday night around the close of business. The next morning, the governor called in the news cameras for the official announcement, and he came to Broward to do so. Along with the letters, 7 pages of specific requests for documents and contracts, transportation, compensation and grants, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, and also climate initiatives. Audit teams from Florida's Department of Government Efficiency, aka Doge, plan to begin Broward's big financial investigation on Thursday, and if the county does not comply, legal consequences may include fines of $1,000 a day per violation. Governor Ron DeSantis says the state plans to Doge 10 to 15 more counties and cities, name-checking South Florida where they may be.
Miami-Dade, we have had some cooperation. I guess you'd say some cooperation with, I know we work with one of the commissioners, Eric, would that be, I don't think they fully got on board, but what we do have some of the commissioners are helping on that. So I would say that they've been better than some, but not good enough. And so I think it's very possible that you see an announcement on Miami-Dade within the next couple weeks.
Broward County Mayor Furr was on vacation when the state's letters landed. He is zooming in from vacation. Dade City Mayor, good to have you.
Thank you.
Wow, what a vacation buster those letters were.
No kidding. I'm sitting there canoeing on the river. I'm getting all this information. So it's like, okay,
all right, got me off the river. You know, I'm sorry we've busted your vacation too. I do appreciate you being here today. But let me just start with this. What's wrong with the scrutiny? Scrutiny is, financial scrutiny is kind of good in some ways, no?
It's always good. It's always good to make sure that you're doing the best job possible. We do our own scrutinizing. We have an auditor full-time that is, that's his job, to look at every contract and look for any anomalies. So it's nothing new. And if there's any place we can do better, we will. And we're committed to complying fully.
So the deadlines here were pretty tight. I've learned in covering the governor and the state that if you watch closely, they telegraph what they're going to do long before they actually do it. So this has kind of been in the pipeline for a few months, but the law that allows it just took effect July 1st. But this week the governor had said this is a quote, there is some criticism with the way Broward County has operated. And he never went into, in that public interview, who complained and where is that criticism? Do you know? Has the commission and the mayor been getting that?
No idea. It sounds pretty anonymous to me, to be honest.
And what do you make of that?
I think when they decided to adopt Doge for the state, I guess my first thought was they would do it like the federal government did. Federal government looked at they adopted Doge, and then they examined themselves. They examined all their different departments. I thought the state would actually begin examining itself. That's, obviously that's not the case. They kind of leapfrogged what they were looking at. But, I guess they want to start somewhere. And, we have maybe, because we have 9 Democrats as commissioners, maybe that may be a reason why he's starting there. But we do have different, we go about doing things a little differently down here, and we're proud of it.
And you serve a constituency that might be a bit different from a constituency in Hardee County or Liberty County, and they as well. Let me get into a little specific with you, because the criticisms from the state include both the collection and the spending. And what the governor and the CFO were talking about was that there is $500 million more property tax revenue being taken in by Broward County since 2020, and yet the population increase is far below that. I think they mentioned 5 or 7%, and frankly, I'm just repeating them. I don't know if those numbers are right. But that was one of the things that they thought somehow was fuzzy math. Can you explain that?
Yeah, and I think what, in his own metrics, what he mentioned in the press conference was that that's what he's going to be looking at, a combination of inflation and population growth. When you look at Broward's, our inflation and population growth, if you look at the metric together as to what you would expect the spending to increase by, it's 32%. Broward's budget has actually increased to 33%. We are almost exactly in line with what one would expect. So I'm not sure, given his own metrics, why Broward would be considered an anomaly.
And then on the spending issue, they cited some very specific things, and anyone who is into state news and what's coming down the pike in the last few years will not be surprised to know that they've targeted the DEI policies, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that are against, some of which are actually against state law now, and also Green New Deal, climate and resiliency policies. And then the CFO cited $800,000 spent on a float for the Rose Bowl parade, which a lot of eyebrows raised on that, but go ahead, explain.
Sure. With regard to DEI, we've scrubbed every statute that we have to take all the DEI language out of there. But what's important from Broward's perspective, because we are a majority county, we want to make sure that everybody in this county is valued and represented. We actually, when it came after the census, every county is required to redraw their commission lines, their boundary lines for elections. And we decided we weren't going to pick our voters. We were going to let the voters pick the candidate. So what we did is we did an independent drawing of those lines. We had FIU do it to make sure that we are fairly represented. I think that's a good practice, given that I'm hearing on the state level, they're thinking about doing redistricting entirely. Would they follow this practice? Probably not, because it doesn't, it doesn't allow you to gerrymander. This is more trying to get fair representation. With regard to climate change, there's a big difference between the urgency for South Florida counties compared to Tallahassee. You've got Monroe County. We established a compact, Monroe County, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, to share each other's resources, expertise. We put together a unified sea level curve. We've just put together a resilience plan that was looking on the return on investment of doing any kind of big planning things. But we had the Broward workshop, which is people from our business community, and they challenged us. They said, if you're going to go doing a plan like this, you've got to have some economic metrics. You've got to show us a return on investment. So we did that. We did all that together. They have looked at this and they have embraced it. And it's probably a model. That plan is now being looked at throughout this country and actually worldwide because of the thoroughness of it and the economics of it. So we're proud to show that. If we're going to be made an example of, let us provide really good examples of good governance.
So the best defense is a good offense, is what you're saying.
I think so. I think so.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, don't leave out the Rose Bowl float, and that's convention development tax, which is kind of different, but still tax. Tourist development tax, which is still public money.
No, and it is, and that money, so people know where that comes from. That comes from bed tax, from tourists that are staying in our hotels. That money can only be spent on trying to advertise in whatever way, we best think we can attract tourism to our county. We always look at the metrics that are, that would determine does this have the best chance of putting heads in beds? We're looking at this next year, we're going to be hosting the Orange Bowl. We're going to be putting a lot of money into the Orange Bowl or into the College Bowl. FIFA's coming. We're going to be putting money into that because we know that's going to be bringing a lot of people to our county, lots of hotels, lots of restaurants. We are a tourist economy. So that money cannot be spent on public safety or libraries or parks. It has to be spent on tourism. And I don't think people know that.
Yeah, I want to, there's something, the biggest chunk of the budget, or one of the top two biggest chunks, is public safety, is the Sheriff's Department. There's been, Sheriff Gregory Tony has been in front of the commission, I think at one point asking for a 50% rise in his budget and got declined. Now asking for 14%, far from the 3% that the commission is thinking about. But I want to play something that the governor said. The governor who actually hired Gregory Tony when he was in his first term, and how he is balancing a public safety budget with his support for law enforcement. And take a listen.
I've been a big supporter of law enforcement, obviously, and I think that we have the best sheriffs in the country in the state of Florida. But I would not say all 67 departments, are run great. I would say most of them are run well. But I would say that there are some that need to be looked at, and I think this could be one here.
Is this going to be a financial/political fight coming up?
Well, what's interesting is in the letter that I got from the governor, it doesn't mention public safety. And it's the one place we cannot audit the sheriff. We're not allowed to. So, this would actually be an opportunity. And this is where most of our money goes, by far. And you're very apt to hone in on that, because that is where the majority of our money has been going. That's where most of the big increases have been going. A good example is our dispatch. We were having a little bit of problem with dispatch, having on-time calls a couple years ago. So we needed to. We had a lot of vacancies, and we looked to the north and we looked to the south, and we realized our compensation wasn't in line. So we raised everybody's salary, and we started asking, or for more people to come, and they did. And now our on time, those things are all back in line. But those are the kind of things where we've tried to work with the sheriff. But there's also been a lot of, requests to buy helicopters and this and that. Some things are, we try to work with him as best we can, but we cannot audit where most of that money goes. So, if I was the governor and I was looking at where spending was really going, I would be looking at where most of the money goes. That would only make sense to me.
Mayor Furr, I'm going to release you back to your vacation with eternal gratitude for joining us. And Thursday, we'll see you at County Hall for the Doging of Broward.
Thank you, Glenna. Thanks for having me.
All right, of course. All right, Miami city elections are now a go again in November, but so is an appeal to postpone them again. Who decides when you get to vote? The man who took it to court, it's Emilio Gonzalez, mic'd up and ready to go next. A win in the battle for Miami elections this year, but not yet the war. This week, a circuit court judge ruled the city commission vote to postpone upcoming November's city elections to 2026 to align with state and federal elections and extend terms for a year. That's unconstitutional without voter approval. Miami Commissioner Damian Pardo actually sponsored that move with a plan to increase turnout and save the city money. But critics saw it as a power grab, among them the DeSantis administration that openly criticized the move and threatened sanctions.
Now, why they did this, was there something behind the scene? I don't know. I mean, obviously it's a shady thing, right? So I think the city's going to have an opportunity to elect a reform mayor and some of these commissioners.
Lawsuit was filed by Emilio Gonzalez, who is one of 11 candidates running to be this year the mayor of Miami. And these are the other 10 people running at this moment against him. And when we get closer to the election, we'll see how all that pans out. We'll have debates, we'll do everything.
Sure.
But this lawsuit really is the news of the week. And so this ordinance that moved the elections is sort of overturned, and the elections are back on. And there's a lot of legal maneuvering here, but.
Well, the ordinance was deemed to be unconstitutional and illegal by the judge.
Yeah.
And once the judge filed her ruling, then the city immediately appealed. And we're going before the Third Circuit Court of Appeals Tuesday morning.
Okay, so we speak to a large audience here. A lot of things that we all have in common, but we all vote for our elected officials. And so that's what makes this such a really important topic to see. North Miami, the city of North Miami, did move their elections a year, one and done, to align, also for the same reason, to align with the bigger state and federal elections. There was an opinion, there was a court challenge, it stood up to appeal, and the judge in your case really wanted to see that and study it. So I think the prevailing theme was, oh, Judge Schur is going to allow the move to stand, but she did not.
She did not, and I'm not a lawyer, and there are some legal.
Just play one on television.
That's right. There are some legal intricacies in the North Miami case, and from what I understand, there were some technical issues and some substantive issues that were not brought up in that case that were brought up in my case.
Can you elaborate on that?
I don't have the details, and I'll probably get in trouble, and I'll be dangerous. But the bottom line is the judge was very diligent. To your point, she studied that case, and she came to the conclusion that the city of Miami violated its own charter, which I believe she called the Constitution of Miami, if I'm not mistaken. It violated our charter, it violated the county's home rule charter, it violated the Florida Constitution.
By not putting it to a vote.
Correct. So what the city was arguing, the city argued on two things. One, if North Miami can do it, we can do it, number one. And number two, we didn't really change the charter. We just passed an ordinance. The judge saw right through that.
But the charter change, I'm sorry to interrupt, the charter of the city of Miami, nothing changes the language of the charter in this ordinance.
No, but the ordinance goes against the charter. The charter invalidates that ordinance. And I believe the judge called it a semantic sleight of hand, right? The law is about substance, not about semantics. And she told the city of Miami that they had violated the law, they violated the Constitution, they violated two charters, not one. And the Miami-Dade County Attorney's Office was on my side, arguing that indeed they needed to interpret the Miami-Dade County Charter to my benefit.
So right now, do the elections in November go, or are they on hold while this is in court?
Well, right now it's being appealed. It's unfortunate that we're spending taxpayer dollars. In fact, I'm paying for their appeal, as is everybody else who lives in Miami, and we'll wait. We were very fortunate in that we asked for an expedited hearing. Judge Schur, ruled last week, and now we're going before the appeals court. After that, the only option the city has would go to the Supreme Court if they decided to hear the case. I hope they don't do that. I don't understand, Glenna, why is it so hard to vote here? I mean, it's not rocket science.
All right, well, that's such a good segue for my next question, because I want to kick it up a little bit to the actual elections. The city of Miami has sort of this outsized reputation relatively small city in the grand scheme of things. And people from the city of Miami, by and large, most of them do not vote.
Right.
And so what Commissioner Pardo, when we had a discussion about why he thought this was a great idea, he said aligning 1 year, one and done, it's not going to be changed every year, but aligning the city elections with state and federal elections boosts turnout, no doubt, and also saves money for the city. What is wrong with that idea?
What's wrong with that idea is that to do that, you have to ask the voters. It has to go before a referendum. And the voters need to decide when we can have elections as per our city charter. That's one. Secondly, we had a lady at our trial from North Miami who asked to speak, and she spoke and said, you know what, we moved the dates and it didn't make a difference because people were tired of having politicians imposed on them rather than us voting for them.
And that would be I would like to vet that statement right here, right now. I'm not sure we can, but I just want to, the last elections, 21 elections in the city of Miami. So Mayor Francis Suarez was reelected, Commissioner Joe Carollo reelected, and the two of them at the time made a point of saying we were overwhelmingly reelected, and they're not wrong. I mean, they were overwhelmingly reelected, but the number of people who actually voted in the city was not even 10%. So, for instance, the commissioner, 6,200 people voted. And so the overwhelming vote by a small number of people, is that a mandate for a...
Well, listen, the new District 4 Commissioner, Ralph Rosado, he won with like 2,800 or 2,900 votes. What that tells you is...
But the percentage
right,
is what counts.
Correct. But what that tells you is, listen, people come to Miami, many of them from other countries, because they're not allowed to vote. Voting is sacred here. It really is. People don't vote because they don't like the candidates. Our candidate class is awful. If I have to choose between voting for bad or worse, I'm staying home. I'm not giving anybody the privilege of my vote. And that's what we're seeing. And by the way, and that's what people are telling me. They're telling me, thank God you're doing this. Thank you. People stop me when I'm pumping gas. Please, thank you.
I want to bring up something you said about this. You said the move of the elections reminds you of the regimes and dictatorships forcing on voters what they think is best.
Exactly.
But so why is the voting percentages so low now if voting is so important and people really want to stake in it?
I guarantee you that this election, there's going to be a tidal wave of votes coming out. People are upset. About what's going on, about having an election taken from them, about having our elected officials extended. I'm a big movie buff, classic movie buff. I don't know if you remember the movie Network.
Of course.
Where the guy opens
every broadcaster
that's right,
knows
That's
Network.
right. A disgruntled journalist opens a window and yells out, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And that sentiment is what I'm seeing every single day, Glenna. And by the way, this is moving more than the election. If people, normally when you run for office, people want to know, why are you running? Well, let me tell you why I'm running.
I'm going to stop you there, and here's why. We invited you for the news of the week, and it will be abundantly fair to every candidate running for everything in Miami, whether it's this year or next year, and we will do candidate and positions and stuff.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. But what I'm saying is, to your point, what's happening now is indicative of a greater problem in our community. People want to vote. People want to say in who their leaders are.
Well, we will see you on Tuesday.
I'll be there Tuesday morning.
And we'll see how this goes.
And we're going to win Tuesday morning, and we'll have that conversation.
I'm ready.
So am I. So am I,
Really
and so are the residents of the city of Miami. We want to vote.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right, up next. Would you vote to expand Medicaid in Florida? The head of a group fighting state law to make that happen is here next. A group trying to put Medicaid expansion on the Florida ballot next year faces a bigger hurdle with the new law making it more difficult to collect the voter petitions to do so. Florida Decides Healthcare, it's the group, filed a federal lawsuit over that and is pushing on. And this week, the group made a public poll showing significant support for a constitutional amendment expanding Medicaid in Florida. Mitch Emerson is the executive director of Florida Decides Healthcare, right here with us via Zoom today. Mitch, great to have you on the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Glenna.
So I will, in full disclosure, I am not a big fan of polls where you haven't taken the dive into the crosstabs and really gotten the context of what happens. But what was interesting is that already you are showing support above what would be the 60% threshold to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot.
Yeah, Floridians are already with us. We, released this new poll showing that nearly 7 out of 10 Floridians are already supporting the constitutional amendment, and that's huge. It shows support putting Medicaid expansion on the ballot, and when Floridians learn more about what's at stake, that support jumps up even more. We're not trying to convince people, they already get it. They want to close the Medicaid gap. This isn't a left or right issue, it's a Florida issue. We've seen that.
I was going to ask you, it feels like Medicaid expansion is a partisan issue. It does feel like that just based on who in which party is for or against it. And largely it rests on funding, be it state or federal dollars.
So if you look at the poll, it's actually supported across all parties, all areas. In fact, over 50% of Republicans and even those identifying themselves as ultra-conservative Republicans are at 50%. So this is not a partisan issue. And what we've seen is that when voters hear from us, when we tell them the real stories behind the numbers, support only grows. By helping us put Medicaid expansion on the ballot and voting yes on closing the gap next year, we'll be bringing our own tax dollars back and getting Floridians covered, including older folks, veterans, and working people who shouldn't have to go bankrupt just to afford health care. At the end of the day, this is about what makes the most sense, making sure no Floridian has to go without health care just because of a broken system.
So let's get into, if we can, the details, so people will know what you're trying to put on the ballot, and what I see here, what the ballot language would be it would be expanding eligibility for Medicaid to adults 18 to 64 who are below 138% of the federal poverty level. So break that down into some kind of a more palatable, who is this group that would now be included that isn't now?
So it's real simple. What we're fighting for is to let Floridians decide whether we expand Medicaid in the state of Florida. That's it.
To whom, I guess, is my question. Who is that pool of people who would be affected?
So it's over 3.7 million Floridians are falling into what is called the coverage gap. They make barely enough to put food on the table for their families, but not enough to actually afford health care insurance. Think about this, a family of 3 living off $36,000 a year, and they're priced out of basic health care. Again, these are seniors and caregivers, veterans, working parents, people doing everything right, but still can't get the care they need. And here's the thing, Florida is already on the brink of a healthcare disaster. We've got a shot to stop it before it hits. But this January, the number of Floridians currently uninsured who will lose their health insurance because of cuts to the Affordable Care Act tax credits will double. That's 1 in 5 people in Florida will not have health insurance. These are folks who work hard, who do everything right, but still don't make enough to afford private insurance. Again, that's 3.7 million Floridians left without access to health care, and it's doubling our current uninsured rate from 1 in 10 to 1 in 5. They can be covered by Medicaid expansion.
So here's the argument and the opposition that I've heard in quizzing some of the elected leaders who are against it. It is a financial issue to them. And some are, and in fact, Rick Scott, when he was governor of Florida, his take was, if we expand Medicaid in Florida and state pays for it with the federal dollars, we don't know when those federal dollars, if they'll go away, and the state will be on the hook for things we cannot afford. Right now, we are sitting with a state projection of a deficit coming up. And so take me through the numbers that the state possibly would have to absorb without the budget to do so.
So first of all, in terms of the argument of removing that 90% reimbursement rate, because what it is it's a 90% reimbursement rate from our federal tax dollars, right? That has been debated multiple times. There was obviously a lot of conversation around the Medicaid and costs with the most recent big bill in DC. And again, they kept that open because Florida is only one of 10 states that haven't expanded Medicaid. So this is something that is very important to states all across the country. And here's the bigger thing. If we don't close the Medicaid gap, our hospitals will close. Costs will continue to increase for everyone, and healthcare workers will lose their jobs. It's a ripple effect that hurts all of us, even if you have insurance right now. But while we fight to close the gap, our federal tax dollars, yours and mine, Floridians' tax dollars everywhere, are being sent to places like California and New York to pay for their healthcare. Meanwhile, Florida is leaving $10.5 billion of our tax dollars on the table every single year. That money should be coming back to our state to cover our people, to support our hospitals and lower costs.
So where are you in the petition gathering process? Because now with the new year comes new laws in who can collect petitions, and the deadlines are a lot tougher. I mean, that's a really heavy lift to get that on the ballot. Where are you in the process?
So we've already collected over 200,000 petitions, and we're putting Medicaid expansion on the ballot for next year. And we can do all of this while not raising taxes. And it's also just worth saying, because we're here, if you haven't signed the petition yet, now is the time, because we, of course, do need more signatures. You can go to FloridaDecidesHealthcare.org to sign the petition to help get Medicaid expansion on the ballot for next year.
So how many do you have so far? Have you counted?
We've collected over 200,000 petitions so far. And we're
so you're about a quarter of the way there or so.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Please do keep us posted on the effort. Mitch, Emerson, great to have you on the program. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, funding freeze thawed. South Florida districts learn millions of federal dollars. They are indeed on the way. Miami-Dade Superintendent is next. Days to go before the new school year starts. Big relief from South Florida school districts that until late this week were scrambling to cover millions of federal dollars held up by the Trump administration. Late this week, a reversal worth about $30 million to Broward schools and $35 million to Dade schools. Dr. Jose Dotres is the superintendent of Miami-Dade Public Schools, coming to us today from a conference in Boca Raton. I'm so happy you're here, Superintendent. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Glenna. Always a pleasure to join you.
So have you gotten official word? Because as of this week, I mean, you just learned about the freeze, and it was a nationwide $5 billion frozen from school districts. I mean, that came just last month. So that was a hole. And then have you gotten the official word that it's back?
Yes, we have. In fact, we had, as all superintendents, we were on a conference call just the other day with the Commissioner of Education, and it has been confirmed.
Okay, good news. So the reason, let's backtrack a little bit. The White House OMB, Office of Management and Budget, in determining how to spend this money, put the freeze on, saying, not a quote, but sort of paraphrasing, there was a concern that it would be used for a political agenda. How do you hear that? What does that mean?
Well, listen, to us, these grants that we have to very deliberately write for and apply for are all about the core services that our students need, whether it's tutoring, whether it's support for students learning English as a second language, whether it is funding for our innovative programs that we want to provide more and more choice programs for our parents. So our grants are all about specific core instructional support needs that our students require. And they have been there for years, whether it's the Title I for enrichment, for bilingual education, or one of them that's really significant, which has everything to do with teacher development, pretty much a budget of over $14 million.
So drill down, you had talked about innovative choice programs. What are those? Because what is innovative to a public school district in Miami-Dade may cross the line for someone who's a very conservative spender in Virginia. So what are those, and are you fearful that, we talked to Broward's mayor being audited for possible DEI expenditures. Florida now has the Parents' Rights in Education. I know I'm throwing a lot into this stew, but those programs, the details of the programs are really significant.
So this particular line, which tends to be labeled as enrichment, academic supports, for our school district, it allows us to become innovative, provide innovative programs for parents to choose programs that they and their children are interested in. And these innovative programs have everything to do with what the future is bringing. Programs that are driven by STEM, science, technology, engineering components that we are establishing. These are programs that are preparing our students not only for college, but for what the future holds in terms of workforce and career opportunities. We are innovating our magnet programs. There's a lot of interest in art and music, and that particular grant, right? It's called the Title IV Part A, has a lot to do with our innovative approach that we as a public school system need in order to be competitive and let our community know that we are the best choice as it relates to all of these choices that we have.
Sounds like a really broad-based education on top of reading, writing, arithmetic, and that stuff. The lawsuits that have been filed during the funding freeze, those are still on. The district is not part of those lawsuits. That was a number of states and also some education alliances, PTSA. Why not be part of that lawsuit for this important money?
Well, this is where the board makes a decision. However, Glenna, I have to tell you that we, in terms of Miami-Dade, we do a lot of advocacy at the state, at the federal government. I myself, I've met with senators and I've met with lawmakers, and there is a very strong sense in our school board that we have to advocate, we have to explain to lawmakers what these funds are for very deliberately, and make sure that everyone is aware of how we utilize these funds, and if these funds were not available, what the implications would be to not only the students, but actually the parents and the economy, the local economy.
And I'm sorry, go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt.
So advocacy, which is educating lawmakers and the community about how these funds are used and what implications would occur if they're not available, there's a big emphasis on us making sure that we do that.
And is that, there is still talk of, at the federal level, the elimination completely of the Department of Education. Are you concerned that that would then affect this money and money to come?
So let me just say this, as a superintendent, one of my priorities is to make sure that funding, and I have to say it, whatever source we get it from, that we receive the funding that our teachers need, that our students need, that our school leaders need, in order to provide the best services possible for our students. So how that will result in the channeling of funds to our districts, to our state, that has yet to be determined. But again, the important thing is that we advocate and that we always alert lawmakers in our community how we utilize funds and what funds we need. Because to your point, every school district is different. We in Miami-Dade, we're dealing with a lot of children that are learning English as a second language. We want them to be proficient so they graduate from high school and they proceed to college careers or technical careers as well. So that is the focus of what we need to do. And I feel that there is a muscle that we have to get stronger at, and it has to do all with advocating, educating, and articulating clearly how we utilize funds that either will come from the federal government or from the state government.
And it sounds like, at least in this case, you were successful at that.
Well, we definitely tried. We definitely did, the board and myself and everyone, making sure that there was enough awareness regarding how these funds are utilized. Because sometimes even the titles of the grants, you see a title and the title may not say much. And so that is part of the process.
Branding. We're all about branding.
And branding and understanding it clearly, correct?
Yeah.
Understanding it clearly.
Understood. Superintendent Dotres, it is always great to have you on the program. Best of luck. School starts August 14th, just what, 10 or 12 days away? Best of luck to you.
Thank you, Glenna. Thank you very much.
Of course. All right. Up next, coming up, 1 month since Independence Day, our own Local 10 Independence Day, and how you can be a part of that. That's next.